everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you. And in winding down 2025, we'll take a look back at James Gunn's first chapter of his DC Cinematic Universe and assess as to whether it's been a good start or not. Now, there may be spoilers mentioned for all content within James Gunn's universe and also possible ones for movies within the previous DCEU, so just beware when going to this overall video. So yes then, in terms of 2025, where we finally started to see James Gunn's DC era take shape, his so-called Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters started to take full swing. Firstly, we had the animated series Creature Commandos, which was in late December 2024, but obviously fell into this year. We then had his big budget Superman project that was released on July the 14th. And then shortly after that, we had the second season of Peacemaker coming out in August. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you've known that whilst I've appreciated James Gunn's qualities and his success for certain characters, most notably, of course, the Guardians of the Galaxy, I've always maintained that he wasn't the right person to be leading the DC universe, especially the elite tier characters of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. I've just felt that his tone and his overall sensibilities and style just isn't the right fit for those iconic characters. And in terms of 2025, I'd say that this was proven to be the case, with all three projects making very little impression or not making the big impact that DC Studios was certainly hoping for. Creature Commandos was really just an adjacent Suicide Squad with yet another undercover Black Ops group of superpowered beings working for Amanda Waller. It didn't really appeal to a large enough audience due to its R-rated tones and very much chaotic storytelling and lackluster characters. It really wasn't the ideal start for your first entry into the universe, because already you're splitting and very much dividing the potential audience share that you want to bring into your new iteration. So it's just very ill-advised from the start, and it just didn't make any real impression in terms of a serious superhero animated story like, say, for Invincible. Now, it has been renewed for a second season, but whether it will draw any new interest remains to be seen, and I really can't see it going on beyond that. Now, in terms of its second season, Peacemaker had already caused early division before it even aired, with James Gunn announcing that this second season was very much a soft rebooting of the universe. We have to remember that Peacemaker had actually started under the Snyder DC mythology, especially when we had that end credit scene at the end of the first season when we had the Justice League in silhouette appearing at the end, where we saw Peacemaker defeating the Butterfly invasion. But any hope of any connection or any furthering of the Snyderverse was truly eliminated when we saw the first recap of the first episode of Peacemaker, where James Gunn instantly replaced a lot of the Justice League members from that universe, and he instead instilled the likes of Green Lantern and also Hawkgirl, as well as Supergirl, who we all know will be coming in 2026. So already that was not a good start in trying to hit the ground running with a more unified reception. Now, in terms of the season itself, it wasn't really strong in terms of its story, despite having an initially interesting concept where we saw Peacemaker enter an alternate universe that on the outside was a suburban utopia, but on the inside was much more of a fascist or white supremacist society. There was a lot of scope here, but the show really didn't do anything with this idea. It really, the reveal itself came very late on in the game, I believe in around the 6th episode of the 8-episode season, and we had very little in terms of story and character progression itself, so there wasn't really any compelling pull. And of course it maintained its usual juvenile level of tone with various sex scenes, particularly in the first episode, alongside the juvenile humour and the foul language. And it even left some fans of the series extremely disappointed with its conclusion to the second season finale. We had an end credit scene that saw Peacemaker kind of locked away in another prisoned alternate universe that was set up by the Rick Flag character played by Frank Grillo. But that wasn't really enough to really excite people for any potential third season, and enthusiasm itself was less than stellar for any continuation of the series. There hasn't been any announcement yet as to whether we will indeed see the third season, but I wouldn't be surprised if the second season was the last for this particular show. And of course, we do have to quickly talk about Superman. And look, I've covered the movie multiple times within my channel. He remains still the greatest ever superhero character in all of popular culture and still my personal favourite. So I will always have certain high standards and expectations for this character. And sadly, James Gunn's movie fell way short of those standards. It is most definitely the messiest and most incoherent Superman movie. Yes, it had all of the bright colours and certainly was much more lighter in tone than what we saw with the Zack Snyder Man of Steel. But having bright, flashy colours isn't enough. You have to strike a balance between the humour and the levity and the more seriousness and the grandeur. Superman, at the end of the day, has to be a convincing hero with a certain level of confidence and assurance. And this being James Gunn, he of course went the other way. We had a Superman who was literally resembling a teenager in the man's body. He still had a lot of insecurity and doubts about himself. Yes, he had good intentions in wanting to save the world, but he still couldn't deal with his overall role as the world's protector. There was an internal struggle many times just of the character just trying to get to grips with what it meant to be a superhero. And when he couldn't get a grip on his emotions, he was often shouty and having various tantrums. We had some of the most laughable scenes, that extended sequence between Clark and Lois in a kind of fake interview. And then later on, we had those two moments with Lex Luthor when he bursts into his office, very angry at the absence of Crypto the dog. And then later on, at the end of the movie, where he has a very forced speech about being in touch with his overall humanity. And this is, of course, James Gunn and how he tries to portray much more of a flawed individual, the imposter syndrome that he's talked about many times, and with certain characters that can work, i.e., Star Lord or indeed Peacemaker to a lesser extent. But the one character it absolutely doesn't work for is Superman. As I mentioned, Superman has to have a certain assurance and a certain poise and conviction that makes us as an audience completely believe that he is the right person to save the world. If we have a Superman that doubts himself, then we can't have the same conviction and we tend to doubt him as a character. And that's what I felt right throughout the movie. And it was much more of James Gunn and how we wrote the character rather than David Corenswet, who had the ideal size and certainly the look to be a potentially great Superman. But sadly, he was undone by the material in the same way that Henry Cavill was previously. And of course, in terms of this version, that horrendous suit design didn't do any favours at all. Easily the worst cinematic Superman suit that we have ever seen. Now, while Superman performed very well in domestic cinemas, grossing over $350 million, its worldwide tally of $616 million was less than Man of Steel without inflation, and that, of course, invited plenty of scrutiny, particularly with the Snyder fans who were all too welcome to point that out. And the never-ending debates are still going on now about whether Superman 2025 has been profitable or not. Did it make more money on home video or digital release? And we can have these endless discussions, but at the end of the day, the fact is that James Gunn's Superman didn't have neither the commercial or the cultural impact that certainly Warner Brothers would have liked. I've stated in the build up to the movie that anything north of $800 million worldwide would have been a win, but this fell way short of that. And whilst the sequel has been greenlit, Man of Tomorrow, I believe the title is, where we will see the inclusion of Brainiac, and the overall performance of that film will really tell us as to whether James Gunn's Superman has been a success. But I think for most fans in general, this has not been the great modern generational Superman that we were certainly hoping for. And it yet again is a further depressing feeling to ponder as to why exactly we can't get cinematically Superman right in this modern day age of superheroes when we've seen it previously done to literal perfection before. I refer, of course, to the Christopher Reeve movies, the first two, and in other formats in terms of animation or television, we've seen very strong interpretations of the character, yet for some reason in this modern day space, we just can't get it right in the movies. So very depressing all the same. And it's that movie that underlines why I don't believe that this has been a very good start at all for James Gunn's and his first chapter of the DC universe. Going into 2026, we have the Supergirl project starring Millie Alcock. The trailer recently dropped a couple of weeks ago, and we do later on have the Clayface movie coming out as well. And I'll do a separate video looking into both of those projects and their potential chances of success. But right now, where we stand, 2025 was not a very good look for DC, Superman in general, or indeed the hopeful future of the DC universe going forward. So those are my thoughts and feelings when analysing the first chapter of James Gunn's DC Cinematic Universe in 2025. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any other further movies, television series, or any other topics within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, then also let me know in the comments, and I'll see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.